right, back here on the Big Talker FM. We're 23 minutes in front of the hour. Yaël Ossowski for the Consumer Choice Center joins us here this morning. ConsumerChoiceCenter.org, the website. Yaël, you there? Good morning.
I'm here, Joe. How you doing? Thanks so much for having me on.
No doubt, weaving and threading the needle here to make sure that we were able to get you on with some technical difficulties. It's amazing how difficult it is sometimes to be the one-man band, and the key is not to get overwhelmed or anxious. You just have to stay cool, calm, and collected, and here we are.
And no one does it better than you, Joe. You're doing splendidly. The hardest working man in radio, I always say, and I stand by it.
Yeah, Yaël, you've had a number of pieces get published over the last week surrounding your outlook on how we need to push this economic revival sooner rather than later, as you put it. Please explain.
Yeah, I think this really stems down from looking at the numbers and everything that we're up against. You know, there's been a huge push from President Trump to try to reopen the economy. I think it's on his part been more rhetoric. Trump is showing all of us that he is standing with the workers who've been out of work, with people who are being laid off, with those entrepreneurs who aren't able to open up their businesses, at the same time as protecting those who are on the front lines of dealing with the virus and all the health consequences, those that have been diagnosed, those who have unfortunately lost their lives. Trump has signaled again and again that, you know, the government is there to try to solve this crisis in whatever capacity it can as a federal government. The states are doing much the same, but he's always had that signal that it might be time to restart, that we might have reached that point where we're also not saving more people than we otherwise could if we were to lift our lockdown order. So that's kind of the take that I took in the articles that I've been publishing. If you look at a lot of rural counties, and we see this in New Hanover County in North Carolina, there where you are, Joe, is you haven't had too many diagnoses. We haven't had too many deaths, thankfully, but at the same time, businesses are closed. Everyone is forced to stay home. And some areas, they're doing a very good job of mitigating this, and others they're not. We should send our resources where they are not, and we should allow people to get back to work in the places where they're not going to have as much of a risk. And also, we should encourage people to continue with the guidelines. Let's continue the social distancing. I go one further and say if we're going to open up the economy, I think just having masks is not much of a trade-off. That's exactly what we've had to do here in Austria. If people want to go to the stores, you just need to have a mask. That's fine for the short term. Let's not have this forever. But if you look at all kinds of rural hospitals across the entire country, millions of health professionals are losing their jobs. And we're just talking about health professionals. We're not even talking about the tradesmen, the plumbers, so many other people who are working and just can't because of some government order, whether it be through their state or their city. It's been very crushing. I think we have saved a lot of lives. We have been able to really solve this from the very get-go. It hasn't been ideal, but what pandemic ever is. But I think it is time to open things up. Let's not try to lock down the entire country. We need unique solutions that are tailored to the situations, to the cities, to the circumstances. I think that's more the message that we need to push right now.
And it's your perspective that given the responsibilities a lot of us have taken seriously over the last few weeks to stay at home and adhere to the guidelines, as we have been trusted to do that, you feel that we should be equally as trustworthy to continue our lives with the guidance of the doctors and the scientists who are leading the way with all of this.
Yeah, and all this to say, opening back up, I think people have a misperception, specifically those that are going to criticize people who make this argument and saying, well, you just want things to go back to normal, everybody roaming free, absolutely no protection, no one's washing their hands, everyone's touching their faces. I mean, we know exactly what has brought us to this point. We know how these viruses spread. We know how contagious they are, and we can take these kind of measures to stop it. I think most people are not going to just go out willy-nilly and not even think about the risk or the consequences. But at the same time, if you're not getting your paycheck, you're not able to put food on the table, that's the biggest risk of them all. And I think that's affecting way more people than likely would otherwise need to happen. So again, this is not a point in saying that we neglect anything or that we deny anything. We know what the guidelines are. We've had great amount of health professionals, both in the government and the private sector, who've given us all kind of great advice that have given us the guidelines that we need to follow. I think it's just incumbent upon Americans to take that. So trust the American people, trust that we can get back to work, trust that we're able to follow the guidelines, we can be responsible and respectful to our neighbors, to our grandparents, to our parents, to people who might be at risk. You know, it's really looking at testing those and quarantining those who might be more at risk and allowing the rest of us to get back to work and hopefully jumpstart the economy that all of us are working on.
Yaël Ossowski with the Consumer Choice Center, the global grassroots movement for consumer choice, consumerchoicecenter.org, their website. I want to point your attention to two separate articles that Yaël has published, one at InsideSources.com, Overreaching Lockdowns Are Flattening Our Livelihoods, and another opinion piece in the Waco Tribune down in Texas, Trump correct to push economic revival sooner than later. And Yaël, a lot was made over the last, of course, week or two about the president's comments surrounding his ultimate authority. And here we go. You know, that was the news, the groundbreaking news for a week, that everyone was worried that King Trump was going to weigh down on the states. Then you heard all of these governors react. No way, Trump is going to tell us what to do. And at the end of the day, Trump just says, well, here are the guidelines. The ball's now in your court.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is another example. And again, I'm guilty. I'm a journalist. I've been in this realm, guys, and this is just another area where journalists have failed us, where they get caught up in words and definitions, and everyone wants to try to get their Pulitzer Prize in analyzing Trump instead of just looking at, you know, what are the guidelines, what are the rules, what is actually going to happen, rather than being caught up in hypotheticals. I mean, the amount of hypothetical journalism that's been thrown out there, that's really just irresponsible. You know, if we don't have journalism cards in this country, but if we did, a lot of them would be getting them pulled. I'll tell you that right now. So I think that's just been more hanging up on Trump's words. Nobody wants to give the president credit, but look, this is a president and he puts out ideas. He can't force us to do anything except what is in the Constitution or what the laws on the books are. And I think by these guidelines, that gives us somewhat of a roadmap. You know, it's still going to be up to the governors. It's going to be up to localities. But people are rising up. People are not necessarily just going to, you know, sit down and they know they can be responsible